Good morning.
Good morning.
We'll wait for a few more minutes till see who else shows up, and then we'll get started. So about 12 to 15 people responded. A number of them, though, said they couldn't make it the first meeting, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
And I won't be here next week. I'll be traveling, but
Yeah.
I intend to come back.
Okay. Yeah, there's no pressure.
Hi, Professor.
Hi, Amanda. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you again.
Good to see you. How's life going?
A little busy. I know past-wise, four littles, that sort of thing, but I started a PhD program this fall, and so the finals week is actually this week. So
Okay.
I'm taking a little lunch break to do some Hebrew because it sounds so exciting, and then I'll be back to paper writing.
Yeah, you're keeping busy. That's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
I sadly don't get to really, use the Hebrew. So I feel like I'm really thankful for you being willing to kind of bring this
Yeah.
back in.
Yeah. Well, man, so many names from years past. So yeah, I've only invited the people from the last 5 years. I probably should extend it. Yeah, but I just thought we'll see if anybody's interested. So I'll wait till exactly 10 o'clock and then I'll start. So the idea here is not that I'm going to quiz you. It just to refreshen, just by reading Hebrew, refreshen what you have learned in the past and maybe strengthen it. You, I will ask, does anybody want to read? You don't have to say yes. You can just sit and watch. And if nobody wants to, that's fine. I'll read and I'll just explain things. And I do want to not just read, but also reflect on the text, and ponder about it. What does it mean for us? So hopefully that will lead to a good interaction and some encouragement to one another as we read God's word. I decided to start with Genesis. Normally for the classes like beginning Hebrew, first semester, you read it till about chapter 16. And so I'm going to start on 17. And I'm doing this because these are well-known stories. So they will even help us a little bit if things are rusty, so that we can just build a little bit on the well-known stories from the Bible, so we don't feel we are completely in the deep end immediately with things we haven't seen before. So all right, so let's get started. So Genesis 17 verse 1. I don't know if anybody wants to read.
I can try.
Okay, great. Just
Okay.
read the first verse. Yeah.
Okay. Whew. All right. Vayehi Avram ben Tishim.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Shana Vatisha
Tesha, yeah.
Tesha Shana.
Shanim.
Whoa. Shani. Let's see. Vayera
Mm-hmm.
Adonai El Avram va Yomer alive. Is that right?
Yeah, alive. Yeah.
Alive. Ani El Shaddai.
Shaddai. Yeah.
Shaddai.
Yeah. So the yod is
Shaddai.
pronounced.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shaddai. Okay. And then let's see. Hit Halef. Let's see. Lafanai.
Good.
Tamim.
You skipped a word, right? You skipped a word.
Oh,
Lefanai
Vayehe.
vehye. Vehye.
Lafanai Vayehe.
No. Lefanai vehye.
Vehye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And with this word, elav. So some people would say elav. Some people would say alive. However you want to do it. So I've heard both. I'm normally inclined more for alive because there is a yod and there is no diphthong where we just ignore the yod. So I wouldn't normally do alive, but anyway, either way is good. So here we're beginning a new section, right? And we're bringing Abram suddenly to a further time. And it says, and it was that Abram was ben tish'im shana. Tish'im, anybody? Okay, it's a little bit rusty. Okay, 90. So Tesha, whoops, I don't know what that meant. Tesha is 9, and the plural then is 90. So 10 times. So he was a son of 90 years and 9 years. And notice the funny thing with the numbers. So the word 90 takes the word shana, year, but it's in the singular. But the word 9 takes the word shana, but it's in the plural. So often you will see that when a number is connected with a noun, and the number is from 2 to 9, it will be with the plural word. But if it goes over 9, it suddenly goes with a singular word. So it's an oddity in Hebrew that we kind of have to get used to. But here then, of course, we have to add, it's 90 and 9. So it's 99 years. And then something happens. Vayera Adonai el Avram. And I want to stop for a second, is Vayera. What's the root? Does anybody know? Vayera.
Ra'ah, like to see.
Ra'ah, yeah. Resh Aleph He. So we've lost the He, which is typical of third He verbs. We often lose that He, especially if we have a Vayektol, we will lose that He. But what's the binyan here?
Maybe a call imperfect.
Yeah, but why is there a tzere then? Why is there a tzere? So that is kind of the odd thing here is we need to explain the tzere. Anybody else?
Where's the tzere?
The tzere right here?
Oh,
See,
okay.
yeah. So
I was thinking Sade. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sade.
yeah. So the tzere is actually a lengthening, because if you go through all of your binyans, what vowels can we have under the preformative? We can have a chirek, we can have a shavah, we can have a patach, and we can have a kametz chatuf for the hofel. And that's about it, not a tzere. So when we realize that, then the tzere must be the result of some change. And so the only thing I can think of is a chirek goes to a tzere for compensatory lengthening. Well, that means then that somehow there was supposed to be a dagesh in the resh, and we couldn't do it, so we lengthened the previous vowel. When do we put a dagesh in the first consonant?
El.
That with the second consonant.
Maybe with a nifal. but we-
Nifal, yeah, in the nifal.
Yeah.
Yikatel, with the doubling of the kof normally. But here with the resh, you can't double the resh, so you have to lengthen the previous vowel. And the verb ra'ah in the nifal has this special meaning, like you'd say he was seen or he appeared. And so the Lord appeared to Abram. And so that's what we find here. Then the Lord, at 99 years old, he is in the land. He still hasn't had a son for himself, by himself. And he hasn't had really any land yet. So he's waiting for the promises to be fulfilled. And now the Lord appears to him. And he said to him, Ani El Shaddai. What does that mean? Ani El Shaddai. Yeah, I am. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I am El Shaddai.
Yeah, I'm El Shaddai. I'm God Almighty, right? I'm God Almighty. And then he says, Hithalech. Hithalech. What is that? What kind of verb is that? What's the root?
Halak.
Good, good. It's an easy one. We like that. What's the
Yeah.
binyan? Hitpael. What's the verbal form? Is it a perfect, imperfect,
Imperfect.
participle? What?
Imperfect?
No, the imperfect would have either a yod taf taf aleph or yod taf taf nun, reformative.
Okay.
We don't have it. We have a he.
So perfect, right?
No.
It could, but actually it's an imperative.
Yeah.
It's an imperative. So here it is. He tells him walk, but wait a second. What kind of walk? This is the iterative force of the hitpael. Continually walk before me, and again, and then here another imperative, and be complete, or often translated be blameless, meaning be perfect. Tamim also. So yeah, tough command. I can see walk before me, yeah, and be perfect, be blameless. Wow. That's quite a command that the Lord gives there. And we'll have to ponder about is how does God expect Abram to fulfill this? That's the goal, okay? When we tell our kids, we don't tell our kids when we send them to school, just try to get a C. We tell them, come on, work so you can get A's, right? The top score. That's what we're aiming for. I mean, the same thing with us. When we work, I don't think we go to work and say, yeah, I'll give him a half-hearted effort. I'll be there a little bit and do some muddling around. No, we want to shine. We want to do a good job. And I think that's kind of the same thing that the Lord is saying. I want you to be perfect. God, that's the standard. I know you're going to fall short, but that's the standard I'm going to place you upon. So let's go to verse 2 a little bit. Yes, somebody has a question. Go ahead.
I'm curious of the ending on Shaddai. Is that because it's a name for the Lord similar to Adonai, or?
No, that's just that word Shaddai. That's a good question though. I just accepted it. So Christina, I'm going to have to look that up to see if there is anything special. There is a lot of question as to where that word comes from, what the root is, and that is not as clear. And there are different proposals there. But otherwise, yeah, I don't really. So it's not the first common singular suffix. If you thought that, I don't think that anybody's saying that. But a good question, and I don't really have immediately an answer for that. Yeah. All right, let's go to verse 2. Anybody would like to read that? It's all right. Let me read
I
it.
will.
Okay,
I can
okay,
read it.
thank you. All right.
Va'etenach.
Va'etena. We don't pronounce the he because
Oh.
that's a mater lectionis. So it's only there to support the vowel. So only if there is a dot in the he at the end of a word, that's when you pronounce it. If the he is in the middle of the word, yes, pronounce it, but not at the end.
Va'etenach. Beriti.
Good.
Bene. Uvenecha.
Uvenecha, good.
Uvenecha. Ve'areva.
Let's do it again.
Ve'arva.
Arbe.
Arvea. Ve'arve.
Yeah, ve'arbe.
Ve'arve. Otecha.
Mhm.
Bimehod.
Bimod.
Bimod. Okay. Bimod.
And then?
Ma'od.
Yeah, bimod ma'od. So it's really a repetition of the word ma'od there.
Very.
Yeah. And here it is, and I will set my covenant. This is not the normal word. So he's not saying he's making a covenant. He's saying he's setting his covenant. He's placing his covenant between me and between you. Now, the between you, what is that? Benecha. What is that suffix? Let me ask you, because you might not know what I'm asking for. Is this a second masculine singular or a second masculine plural?
Singular.
Singular. So he's clearly talking to Abram, right? Between me and between you. Okay. And then he goes on, and I will arbe. What is that verb? I know I skipped over this one. Maybe I'll come back later to that. But what is ve'arbe?
Is it from Rav to
Yeah,
increase?
it's from Rava. That's good. And what's the binyan? That's the question here. Again, a lot of times I will let myself be guided by since it's clearly an imperfect, right? I mean, if I said it's from Rava, so then the aleph is your preformative consonant. And I let myself be guided by the vowels underneath the preformative. And I know for the imperfect, if there's a patach, I'm thinking first, could it be a hiffle? Now, it might not be a hiffle sometimes because certain gutturals will demand sounds before it underneath it, but the resh doesn't have that quality. Resh doesn't do that. The resh is not trying to force the sounds. So I do think it is, not just I do think, the aleph, not the aleph, the patach is a reference to the hiffle. So it's a hiffle. And so Rava normally means to be many, but in the hiffle, it's to make many or to multiply. And I will multiply you very, very much. So, so on the one hand, he's saying, I'm going to set my covenant between you and between me. What covenant is he referring to?
In chapter 15?
Could be from chapter 15. It could be referring to the promises he made in 13, but in 15, it's really named a covenant. So very likely it's the one from 15, which really fleshes out what was promised in 12. See, I say 13, it should be 12. So yes, let's come back now to the etana. What is that? What is that? Ve'etana. What's the root?
Could that be Natan?
It is Natan. It is Natan. Yeah. And Mark, you had a comment?
Yeah, Hina, is it?
It is from Natan. Natan
Oh, Natan.
means
Natan.
Put, place, set.
or to give, right? Put,
Yeah,
place, or to give. Often, most common it's to give, but sometimes it has that idea of setting or placing something also.
Right.
But the Aleph tells us what?
The first person?
Yeah, first person, and not only that, it's an imperfect, right? The Aleph only occurs in the imperfect form. So what we have here, if we know it's from Natan, then it means that the nun got assimilated. That's why there is a dagesh in the tav. And so, but now the question is, why is there a kametz he at the end? Why is there a kametz he? Well, in the first person forms, we add a kametz he if it's a cohortative. And so a cohortative is a volative, right? It expresses the wish. So you could say, and let me place my covenant, or I shall place my covenant, to express the surety of what he will do. So, and I shall place my covenant between me and between you, and I will, because I think it continues, I shall multiply you very, very much. We don't have here a kametz he. Actually, you can't put a kametz he on a third he verb. I mean, a cohortative will not have that. It just can't do that. Good. Let's go to verse 3. Any volunteer?
Vayipel.
I'll give it a shot.
Good.
Ram.
Thank you.
Vayipol Avram al panav
Panan.
vayedaber ito Elohim lemor.
And this is Abram's reaction. Literally, he fell on his face. Not in a painful way, but as a reverential way. He's dropping down in worship. And then then the Lord continues, and the Lord said, and he said, and the Lord said to him, or with him, saying, and we have to go to 4 first. Let me first stop here. What is the root of vayipol? Nafal. So again, just like with Natan, we have the nun assimilated in the peh, and we leave a trace of that with the dagesh. So that's typical that we see. What's the binyan of vayidaber?
Is that normally PL?
Yeah, it's PL. So it's a very straightforward one. Shava underneath the performative, patak underneath the first consonant, and doubling. So, and he spoke with him, and God spoke with him, saying, and now we will see what is being said by God in verse 4. Can anybody read that?
I can read it.
Thank you.
Ani hene beriti itach itach
Mhm.
v'hayita le'av hamon goyim.
Goyim, yeah. And so here, and I, Mark, you still have your you have not muted yet at this time. So yeah. Okay, thank you. He says, I, behold, my covenant is with you. I mean, that's kind of what he said before, but he's restating that because he's going to make an audacious statement. Yes, he had promised him offspring, but now, I mean, in 15, he even said, it's going to be great offspring, but here again, he's going to quantify that a little bit more. And you will be a father of a multitude of nations. You will not just be many, but you will be a father of a multitude of nations. I mean, this is a step forward. He's just trying to express to Abraham, I have not forgotten my promises, and you will be a father of a multitude of nations. Quite a statement here. Here, the v'hayita is we don't have a verb in the previous clause. It's a noun clause, and so that noun clause is understood to be in the present or in the future. My covenant is with you. And then if you try to translate this as a vav conjunction and a perfect, it makes no sense. You know, my covenant is with you, and you were for a father of a multitude of nations. Makes no sense. And so normally, we call this a vav consecutive perfect, and it has this idea of incomplete action, often translated with a future. Normally, there is an imperfect before that. We don't have that here, but it is clear from the context that we have to translate it as a vav consecutive perfect, meaning it is a future action, an incomplete action, best translated in English as a future tense. Okay, let's go to, let me circle, move it up. 5. Anybody wants to read 5?
I can read. I'm a little rusty.
Okay, that's fine. We'll go slow.
The low yikae iod.
Od. Yeah, that's just an accent. So don't let yourself be tricked by that. Od.
Okay. Od es simcha.
Shimcha, yeah.
Avram v'yacha.
V'haya.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Simcha Avraham he Amon Goyim Natatika.
Yeah, very good, very good. Nataticha. And so here, let's go again. Yikare. How would we parse this? What's the root? Yikare.
Kara.
Yeah, kara. Kof resh aleph. What's the binyan?
Nifal?
Yeah, so it's a very straightforward nifel. So here's what he's saying is that Abraham will not be called again your name. Your name will not be called again Abraham. He's saying your name is going to change. The struggle that you have a little bit here is that it seems that Shimcha is the subject, but it has the sign of the direct object. And that is sometimes what we see in passive formations in Hebrew. It's marking it, yes. I mean, normally in a passive form, the object is doing the action, right? The boy hit the ball was hit by the boy. So it's as if the direct object is doing the action. And that's kind of also here. Your name will not be called again Abraham, but your name will be Avraham. And it's explained, what is an Avraham? It's explained, it's kind of like an acronym for Av Hamon Goim, the father of a multitude of nations. I have set you, Nataticha. So here we have Natan again. Natan with now the assimilation of the final nun of the root. Natan, but when we add the first common singular suffix or affix, then the nun gets assimilated. That's why we have a dagesh in that taf. And we have a direct object. So because I have set you as the father of a multitude of nations, that is what he is doing and why he's explaining the name Avraham. And again, all this, he still doesn't have a son to call his own, really. Yes, there is Ishmael, but he's been told that Ishmael is not the son of the promise. He's still waiting for that. Now, in some ways, Ishmael is included in this also, because, of course, that when Ishmael takes off, took off, he eventually becomes many nations also. So I think that is part of that already, but it is really an affirmation that he will have an offspring through his wife Sarai, and that, of course, will be made clear in the following passages. All right, let's go to 6. Any questions? Let's go to 6. Some interesting verbs here. Anybody like to read it? Otherwise, I'll read it. Okay. So here,
I'll read, Jan.
Okay, thank you.
Verse 6, the whole thing?
Yeah.
All right. V'hifreti otcha bimod me'od.
Yeah, I would read it as bimod me'od.
Bimod me'od.
Yeah, we want to have that glottal stop in there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Taticha legoyim lachim mimcha yetzeu.
Yeah,
Yetzeu.
yetzeu. Yeah, and this verb, it would be unataticha. You probably did say that right. For some reason it didn't sound right, but when I now say it, I think that's exactly what I heard from you. So it's fine.
Thank you.
So yeah, here it says v'hifreti. We have to ask again, what is this verb? What is the root of this verb? This is tricky. Okay, what often you have to do when you see something like this is you need to peel off what's definitely not part of the root. Okay, so I'm going to peel off the vav. Clearly, the vav is not part of the root. And then I got my suspicions about the he, because the he could be the preformative of the hifel. And the T, well, that is also suspicious to me, because that normally could be the affix of the first common singular. But that leaves us only with pe and resh. So
Is it Yafar?
Say it again?
Is it Yafar?
No, it's not Yafar.
I think it's Nafar.
No, it's not Nafar either. If it was Nafar, we would have left something in the pe. Nothing is left in the pe. So, but you're doing it right though. You're going through the different possibilities. Could it be a first yod that got dropped? Could it be a first nun? First yod, you would see something here, either a yod with a hifel or a holem vav. Because in the hifel it goes to holem vav. We don't have that.
Oh, it's afar.
We don't normally lose an aleph.
Oh man.
Yeah. That's not normally. It's very rare we do that. But so yeah, the more common or the more the consonant you should jump to is it the third he. So pe resh he, and that's what it is. The he often is changed to yod, and then sometimes even shortened, dropped out completely. And so that's what we have here. vahifreti is really from para, which means to be fruitful. So in the kal, para means to be fruitful. In the hifel, it is to make fruitful. And so that's what God is saying. And I will make you fruitful very, very much. Or often translated, I will make you exceedingly fruitful. However you want to do that. So this is again a vav consecutive. And so it continues the speech of what God will do with Abram. And then here, unataticha, here, and I will place you. We kind of had the same thing, nataticha, and here now, and I will set you, make you for nations. Nation, not just a nation, nations. And then it continues, and kings, melachim, from you, they will go out. So kings will go out from you. So with nations, often you have rulers, and he's saying not just nations, but kings will come out from you. So he's really accentuating that his blessing will come upon Abraham. What he has promised in 12, what he has reaffirmed in 15, he reaffirms again now. So again, all the while Abram is now 99 years old, so he still is going to have kids at 99. Now, different makeup there of genetics, it seems, that they can be that old. Okay, let's go to 7. Anybody would like to read 7? Let me read it. It's a long one. So here, vahakimoti et beriti beni uvenecha uven zaracha acharecha ledoratam livrit olam lichiot lecha lelohim ulezaracha acharecha. Here, we begin, often your first word in a sentence, in a verse, is often your verb. And again, this is the case here. We had one verse where it wasn't, in 4, but there it's so clear. Ani, we know that word, that's I. So that wasn't that hard for us. But here it is bahakimoti. And so what is that verb?
Is that kum?
Yeah, it is kum. It is kum. And kum in the hifel takes an extra consonant, meaning now we have this extra vowel in between. And so that's what we have here. Kum is normally to rise up, but then in the hifel is to cause to rise up, or often translated as to establish. I will cause to rise up, I will establish briti, means
My covenant
between me and between you. Okay. And then it continues, and between your seed after you, for their generations. For what kind of a covenant? Livrit olam, an everlasting covenant. He makes quite a lot of promises here. I mean, it's not just to Abram, but to your seed, and to their generations after you, and for everlasting covenants. And then he's going to make it clear, what is this covenant all about? It's to be to you for God, meaning he will be a God to them, God to them, and to your seeds after you. Later on, this expression gets a fuller fleshing out, is that, and I will be your God, and you will be my people. But that's later on that he starts saying that when with the children of Jacob, they're now a people, and then he expresses that, and I will be your God and you will be my people, and you see that in Exodus being expressed first. But this is kind of the first endowment of that, the first iteration that is then fleshed out later on, and you can see how it starts to work, how he's going to work with Abram and with the offspring of Abram, to be a God to them, and then they will be his people. Let's go to 8. Want to read a little more before we stop and maybe reflect upon it a little bit. Let me read it. And so here then it says, "V'natati lecha ulezaracha acharecha et eretz megurecha et kol eretz Canaan le'achuzat olam v'hayiti lahem lelohim. And I will give to you and to your seed after you all the land of your sojournings." Remember, gur is to sojourn, and here it is the land of your sojournings. It's a noun derived from that root gur. And it says then, what is the land of all your sojournings? He specified it, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, And again, now he expands it. Remember, we had read here, and I will be to you, masculine singular, God. And now he says, and I will be to them for God. So he expands the covenant. It's not just to Abram, but what he had promised to Abram will also be to his offspring. So the promise really here expands to his offspring. Some strong statements and that we find here. He gives the land of Canaan for a possession to them forever. Man, that is political dynamite now, right? I mean, how do you understand this with the whole conflict in Gaza? But it's right there. Now there are some people that would like to say, well, this is symbolically or metaphorically, or I'm not inclined to do that. We'd love to hear from you if you think differently, or even would say this is a reference to the church. I find that a hard thing to take. If you can say, I'm giving this to you, but actually eventually it comes out it's not really to you forever, that I gave this to you forever, it's to some other people, then it becomes a bit meaningless. And so I take it more at face value.
Do you know what the boundaries of the land of Canaan at that time that you've been talking about?
Yeah. At times it has been specified from the river of Egypt, which is near Tel Arish, I believe. So it's a little bit south of Gaza, all the way to the Euphrates. Now, I would say that's what God promised, but they never stepped out in faith to take it. I mean, just look at Joshua and Judges. They failed to do it. And so while it had been promised to them, they never really took it off, followed the Lord perfectly to really receive that land promise completely. They have some of it, but not all of it. I'm not, one has to be very careful. I'm not saying that the present state of Israel is necessarily the outcome of the people of what God is doing. So I don't want to say, well, God has given them back the land. I'm not sure, but I would expect them to have turned to the Lord with their whole heart. Clearly, they have not done that. So I'm not sure that this iteration of the land of Israel is really the fulfillment of all the promise in the prophets where he will call them back to the land. I still believe, I'm dispensational in this, that the people of Israel still have a future, that he will call them in the Hayamim HaHakarit, in the last days, in a very mighty way. But, you know, we'll leave that. We're really getting off track now with our text. So, all right, let's go to verse 9. And I'll read it. Vayomer Elohim el Avram, ve'ata et briti tishmor, ata ve'zaracha acharecha ledorotam. And God said to Abram, and look now, it is, I don't know, did we have that already before? I think the first time, I mean, he called him Avraham before, but now it's in the text, it's kind of a common to not anymore say Avram, but Avraham. So that's kind of interesting. And he said to Abraham, you, and look how he phrases it, literally, and you, my covenant, you will guard, you will keep. This is not the normal word order, okay? One, you don't need the word ata. It's already in Tishmor. He could just have said, V'tishmor et briti. That would have been a normal word order. But by upsetting it and by making the subject expressed with an independent personal pronoun, there is an emphasis. And you, my covenant, you will keep. There is a strong here. You will keep that. And then it says, you and your seed after you for their generations. For their generations. So while he is committing himself to be their God, he also wants them to step forward and say, yes, we will have you as our God. Sorry for that. Let's see if there's anything that is interesting. Tishmor, it's too simple to really stand by. Just a regular second masculine singular imperfect call from Shamar. Let's go to 10. Zot briti asher tishmeru beni u benechem uven zaracha acharecha himol lachem kol zachar. This is my covenant, which you will keep. You will keep. Tishmeru. So now he's not just addressing Abraham, because it is a second masculine plural. You know, it's not Tishmor, it's Tishmeru. Remember here in 9 it says, and you will keep my covenant, Tishmor. But then he explains, well, actually not just you, but also your seed after you for their generations. And now he's incorporating that idea with the Tishmeru. This is my covenant which you will keep between me and between you, plural, before it had been Benecha, singular, between your seed after and between your seed after you. So he's addressing everybody. And it says, circumcise for yourself every male. Circumcise for yourself every male. And so this is very important now. And we have to read 11 with this. And it says there, in maltem et basar arlatchem v'haya lo'ot berit beni ubenechem. So, and you will circumcise the flesh of your foreskins, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and between you. This is the sign. Later on, of course, we'll see another sign come in. And that's the Sabbath, right? So this sign is a one-time sign. The Sabbath is a recurring sign. In a way, in the Christian, with our covenant, the new covenant, we also have two signs. We have the initiatory sign, which is baptism. And we have the repeating sign, which is communion. Those are the two ordinances. And you can see that in even some of the earlier covenants, the covenant with Noah, that there are two signs. And so he works, I mean, that seemed to be a typical thing, an initiatory sign, and then a recurring sign that we often see. So, yeah, he is definitely working out his covenant with Abraham. There's a lot of questions as to how are we to understand the promise covenant and the covenant in 15, and then this or the Sinai covenants. How do they? Are these the same covenants or are these different covenants? And I would normally hold them to different covenants. And so I see the promise covenant as continuing, while the other covenant, and you will see later on in Genesis 26:5, where it says that Abram kept the commandments and the statutes of the Lord. So I see another covenant always placed where it is what I call an administrative covenant. He has given the promise to Abraham, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to make you a great nation, and that is his. Now for him to live out in that covenant is to live according to the administrative covenant. It's the same way. If I give a car to my son, it's his car. But I tell him, you better change the oil on a regular basis and you put gas in it. If he decides, I'm not doing this, that's fine. It's still your car, but you're not going to be driving it far, because you need to put gas in it, you need to put oil in it. You need to make sure that it keeps on going. And it's the same way if the people decide to, I'm not going to follow the administrative covenant, that's fine. You're still my people, but you're not going to enjoy the benefits of the promises, the land and all the other things. And that's how I see the two covenants really work together. Anyway, I went a little bit to a different track, but it's an interesting question. Any questions so far that you have for me? Okay. We didn't really deal with some of the verbs in the later verses. So for instance, in verse 11, you have that verb unamaltem, which is not a very common verb, okay? But can somebody parse that? Okay, it's a bit tricky. It's a bit tricky. Because this is from a middle vav, middle yod verb, mul, and they go a little bit funky in the nifal. I mean, it's not as simple in the nifal. So this is a nifal, and
second masculine plural, right?
Yeah, second masculine plural. Yeah. And
what's the root?
Mul. Mem vav lamet. And I thought we had something here earlier. Yeah, here, like himol. It gives you the nifal infinitive, circumcise for yourself every male. And so here we have a better idea of the root with the infinitive, which takes that anomalous he in the nifal. Here we have the nun of the nifal, but the rest doesn't follow. Normally our nifal would be niktal, right? That's the form, or niktal tem for the second masculine plural. But because of the middle vav, middle yod, it is a little bit off, and it really can mess us up if we try to analyze it, if we don't really realize what the verb is. And so at times you will see that that's when you rely on your, because this is a verb or a word that occurs less than 100 times, use your Reader Hebrew Bible to help you in that. So to stay current in that. All right, I'm going to stop here and ask if there are any questions that you want me to clarify, or, so yeah, anything that you find interesting, any remarks, reflections?
Yeah, back to the beginning when you told him to walk before me and be perfect. And then in the New Testament, we see that his, well, and here too, that his righteousness is by faith because he believed God. Do you connect those two? Walk before me and be perfect, Nick, and then his righteousness is by faith.
Yeah. I mean, we are all, even in the New Testament, we are called to be perfect, right? To be holy, and it really, to me, it drives them to realization, well, I can't do that. And so then he provides them the sacrificial system for their sins. And even then, even the sacrificial system, eventually, I mean, you can see that in the prophets, they're not, if you just go through the motions, that's not what God wants. God wants their hearts, and they fall very, very short. And so they need a redeemer. So that's, I would see that as a storyline, that the call to be perfect is the call to be like the Lord, because he's a holy God. He is a righteous God, and he cannot look aside from sin. So we have to be perfect. We will fall short in that, which will either draw us to realization that we need our sins covered, which the sacrificial system was for, but eventually should lead us to realize, well, even that, that's a never-ending story, because I can bring my sacrifice, and even while I'm doing it, my thoughts already are going to cause me to sin, to be prideful, to be lustful, to be desiring, coveting things I shouldn't be coveting. So it's a never-ending story, and it just makes us realize that on this side of eternity, we need a better sacrifice, and that is, of course, Jesus Christ, and we will struggle with that sin on a constant basis until we meet him, until we are with him in eternity. So it's really a call. It tells more of the God you serve than what we can do. Be blameless, because that's who he is. He's a holy God. And if we want to have fellowship with him, we need to meet him at his level, and that requires us, to really come broken before him, realizing we're standing before him with empty hands. We cannot do it, and completely depend upon him. All right. Well, I will leave it at this. So feel free to connect as many times. I mean, every week I will be here, and we'll just keep practicing. I'm not going to ask you to read unless you're comfortable to volunteer for that. So that's up to you. Maybe you can see a little bit where you're at. Actually, I thought all of you were on a pretty good level. So good job. And just keep practicing. There are recordings out there for you to listen to if that's helpful, or just join up here and we'll just keep reading. So I'm planning to go through the book of Genesis. I don't know how long it will take, 10, 11 verses at a time. And then we'll pick something else. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jan, I have
Yes.
just a random question.
Yep.
Do you have a few minutes or
Sure.
no?
No, go ahead.
So, since I have a couple weeks off of school, I'm just going on these random tangents and reading some Hebrew and things. And so I was reading in Job. Well, first of all, I'll save this question for another time, but I was originally looking at B'nai HaElohim. I'd love to ask you about that sometime, but also was looking at, I think it's verse 8, let me pull it up, but where, I think it's in verse 7, God asks the adversary, where are you coming from? And he says, I've been, going throughout the earth. Let me pull it up. Okay, so in the ESV, the Lord says to Satan, where have you come? From where have you come? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it. In the next verse, the English translations say, and the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil? So in the Hebrew, I'm curious if I'm kind of thinking about verse 8 in a different way, and I'm curious if I'm going way off track by thinking of it the way I'm thinking. So Satan's going to and fro about the earth, right? And he comes and he's in the council of God. And then the wording there in verse 8 is Vayomer Adonai al Hasatan Hasham
Hasamta.
Sorry. Livcha.
Livcha.
Okay. On my servant Job. So I'm curious if this could be looked at as him asking the question, have you set your heart on my servant Job because he's upright and blameless and he turns away from evil? So instead of God sort of suggesting Job to Satan, could it be that Satan's coming in? He was just roaming. He saw Job. He saw he was upright. And so he set his heart to destroy him. And so he's coming to the counsel of God. And then God, kind of knowing his thoughts, is saying, have you set your heart on him because he's upright? And basically everything he's describing of Job, it would be the opposite of who Satan is. And so I'm just curious if it could be sort of looked at in that light, instead of the traditional view.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure I'm grasping the nuance you're trying to bring. So the way I would read it, I'm going to go back to 7 for a second here to make sure I have it. So, and the Lord said to Satan, from where have you come? And Satan answered the Lord, and he said, from going to and fro and from walking about in it being the earth. So, and then it seems that God knows what he's trying to do. I mean, the Satan is the adversary, right? And so God says to the Satan, have you set your heart upon your servant Job? You'll have to do a phrase study. What does it mean to sim lev al something? So you have to look at all the places where that phrase, because what I hear you saying is that God is asking, is it Job you decided to attack? Because there is nobody like him in all the earth, a man who is perfect and upright, fearing God, and turning aside from evil.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Right. And I didn't include all, I don't think, in my search, but I did do seem and
live. Yeah.
And so it was kind of like to set one's mind on something, you know, it didn't strike me as to be to consider.
Yeah. So the what you didn't seem to. Okay, interesting. The one thing I would say, al can be upon or can be against.
Yeah.
So it can be opposites. So, yeah.
So it's kind of, I guess my question is, because in the English, it really seems like God is presenting Job to Satan, saying like, oh, have you considered my servant? And listing all of these attributes. Whereas I was reading it and I was thinking, well, couldn't it be he's saying, have you already set your heart against him because he's blameless and there's no one like him?
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like the difference between the Satan coming into that conversation already having his heart set against Job versus just walking in and then God suggests Job to.
Yeah. I mean, the traditional way is that God is just so happy with Job. And he's saying, you know, did you look at this guy? I mean, how wonderful is he? You're saying is, because now you're really, I mean, unless you, well, I should say, if you take it just a simple question that God is saying, is, you know, that's, I think what you're saying is it Job that you're considering of attacking because he is so perfect? Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting nuance.
And then in the next line, the Satan is, saying, well, why is he, I'm paraphrasing, why is he so good? Haven't you put a fence around him and everything?
Yeah.
So,
I got to take this short. I got a phone call coming in. So
well, thank you so much for your
good
thoughts.
questions. I'm not sure I have a quick answer for that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.